Can everyone see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So to start, I just wanted to thank you for having us today, and I really appreciate the opportunity to speak about Ukraine to you. And I have very fond memories of my time in Maine, and I'm still in contact with my host family, and they're the ones who still connect me to Maine. And again, I wanted to thank you all for being here and showing your interest in learning a bit more about Ukraine. And as the other Kateryna said, my presentation will focus more on the history, and it provides a bit of a timeline from 9th century up to the current events. And at the end, I can speak a bit more about my current situation if you're interested, but I will focus on the history now. So to start us off, I started it from the 9th century when the Kievan Rus was founded, and the traditional account attributes the founding of the Kievan Rus to the semi-legendary Viking leader Oleg, the ruler of Novgorod, who went to seize Kiev, which, owing to its strategic location on the Dnipro River, it became the capital of the Kievan Rus. In the 10th century, we see the establishment of the Rurik dynasty, and the rule of Prince Vladimir the Great heralded the start of the Golden Age. And in 988, he accepted Orthodox Christianity, and it began the conversion of Kievan Rus, thus setting the course of Christianity in the East. And in 11th century, Kievan Rus reached its peak under Yaroslav the Wise, with Kiev becoming the Eastern Europe's chief political and cultural center. This way. Then we have a long history of foreign domination of Ukraine. So from 1237 to 1240, Mongols invaded the Rus principalities and destroyed many cities, thus ending the Kievan Rus's power. And we had Tatars as well, as the Mongols invaders became known and established the empire of the Golden Horde. And the Poland and later the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth gradually annexed what now is the western and northern part of Ukraine. On the south, we had Crimean Khaganate that broke free from Golden Horde and conquered most of the modern southern Ukraine. In 1648 to 1657, we saw the Cossack uprising against the Polish rule and the establishment of hetmanate. And it's regarded in Ukraine as the forerunner of our modern independent state. And we still hear the songs, we still learn about the Cossacks and the history of the beginning of the hetmanate and how it was the beginning of the Ukraine. In 1686, the Treaty of Eternal Peace between Russia and Poland ended the 37-year war with the Ottoman Empire and what is now Ukraine, and partitioned the Hetmanate, which later led to the abolishment of Hetmanate by Russia and the establishment of Little Russia Governorate as the transition entity until the full annexation of the territory in 1781. Then we have the Russian rule. So from 1772 to 1795, most of the Western Ukraine was absorbed into the Russian Empire through the partitions of Poland. And in 1783, Russia took over the southern Ukraine through annexation of the Crimean Khaganate. And 19th century is regarded as the national cultural awakening in Ukraine. And we see the development of the language, we see the development of literature, education, historical research. At the time, the Habsburg-run Galicia became the center of Ukrainian political and cultural activity. And the nucleus of historic Galicia lies within the modern region of Western Ukraine. So it's the territory of Lviv, the territory of Ternopil, and Ivano-Frankivsk. So again, the western part of Ukraine that's currently closer to Poland. During that time, Russia banned the use of Ukrainian language on its own territory, while that Galicia, the area, became the center of the development of Ukrainian culture at the time. The rise of the Soviet Union. So in 1917, the Central Rada Council set up in Kiev following the collapse of the Russian Empire. And in 1918, Ukraine actually declared independence. But in 1921, the Russian Red Army conquered 2/3 of Ukraine and established the Ukrainian Soviet Socialist Republic. And while the Western third became part of Poland. So while we did declare independence in 1918, we later became part of the Soviet Union in 1921. And in 1920s, there was a space for Ukrainian language and culture to be practiced within strict political bounds, but then it later was reversed in the 30s, where we see in 1932 the man-made famine that was perpetuated across Ukraine, and we actually consider it a genocide in Ukraine, and millions of people died, and it was especially prevalent in the eastern regions of modern Ukraine. We honor the day every year, and I believe if not every, then every 10th family in Ukraine will have some sort of story, some sort of legacy of how their families experienced Holodomor. Mine definitely does. Then in 1939, Western Ukraine is also annexed by the Soviet Union under the terms of the Nazi-Soviet Pact. And the country is occupied by Nazis until the 1944. In 1944, we see Stalin deport about 200,000 Crimean Tatars to Siberia and Central Asia, following the accusations of collaboration with Nazi Germany. We actually have a singer, Jamala, who went to Eurovision and won with the song that's called 1944, and that's the events that she's singing about in that song. In 1954, Soviet leader Nikita Khrushchev transfers Crimean Peninsula to the territory of Ukraine, so Crimea becomes part of the Ukrainian territory. And in 1960s, we see the increase in opposition to the Soviet rule. I want to reiterate that the 60s is not the only time where we see the opposition to the Soviet rule. We see that in the 1930s as well, part of the resistance to collectivization that led to Holodomor. But in the 1960s, why is it important, is that we saw the emergence of young, talented prose writers, poets, literary critics, actors. So this educated elite, you can say, known as the Sixtiers. And they became the symbol and the idea of this creative freedom of Ukraine. And then it became the symbol of this Ukrainian national renaissance and the development of Ukrainian culture and the development of the Ukrainian nation. And it led to then their repression in 1972. And it was not only the opposition by the elites. During that time, we also saw workers' protests, strikes, we saw partisan movements, but then during that time, it was very, very harshly repressed. And again, the fate of the Sixtiers was not the optimistic one. Many of them were sent to prisons, many of them died, but this legacy lives on to this day. In 1986, we saw the reactor at the Chernobyl nuclear power station explode. And again, I think this is a very known ecological catastrophe that sent ripple effects throughout the world. And it became one of the big events in Ukraine as well, because it affected millions of people. People died, people's health were affected. And especially with the reaction of the government, where it was originally covered, that people did not know that it was an ecological disaster, and it was very well after the emergency evacuation that people started learning about all of the details of this catastrophe, which delayed the response, which delayed the recognition of how serious this tragedy was. And we transitioned to the independence. In 1991, Ukraine declared independence. And during the 90s, we saw Crimean Tatars and their descendants returned to their native lands of Crimea. And in 2000, the Chernobyl nuclear power plant was shut down 14 years later, and we have a dome that was placed over the reactor to prevent any more radiation from spreading. Of course, it will still be a tragedy, and we'll still have to, this dome will have to be replaced sooner or later, but that was the time when the seriousness started to get addressed, and measures started to be taken to address the emissions. Okay. And this leads us to more recent times. In 2013, in November, we had Maidan Revolution, the protests that started after the government's decision to abandon the plans to sign the association agreement with the European Union, and it blamed the Russian pressure for it. Unfortunately, the peaceful protests turned violent, and in 2014, in February, the security forces killed at least 77 protests in Kiev. And our president at the time, he fled to Russia, which prompted later elections. In March of 2014, Russian forces annexed Crimea. And later that year, they also seized part of Donetsk and Luhansk regions that are close to Russian borders. And that year, actually, NATO confirmed that Russian troops were present on the Ukrainian territory, because originally it was said that it was only pro-Russian groups, but later it was said that Russian troops were actually present on the Ukrainian territory. And current events, on February 24th, 2022, Putin announced in the morning that Russia will conduct a special military operation, as he called it, in Ukraine. And shortly after, the explosions were heard in Kiev and other cities and regions across Ukraine. And it commenced a full-scale invasion of Ukraine. One thing that I wanted to pay attention to is the rhetoric that was used against Ukraine and is still being used against Ukraine to frame the way that Ukraine is portrayed and Ukrainians are portrayed. So we've heard a lot about Ukraine being part of the Russia, Ukraine not being actually a separate country or having separate culture. In 2008, Putin called Ukrainians little Russians and claimed that the country of Ukraine is imaginary. We also see the spread of this rhetoric of denazification and this implication that Ukrainians are Nazis. Unfortunately, I've heard that more and more on the news. I actually no longer read the comments to the news because I will read some sort of comments like that in the comments. I unfortunately heard that rhetoric at my own university and other post-secondary institutions throughout Canada when referring to Ukrainian clubs. And I just wanted to give space to and recognize that this rhetoric is used to almost justify the actions that are perpetrated against Ukraine and justify the invasion as in the country is not real, therefore we can take over the territory. And kind of say that there is no Nazis in Ukraine, that it's this rhetoric of demilitarization, denazification. It tells that Russia and Putin are acting on this long belief that Ukrainian government has no right to independence, whereas we've had this long nation building process that happened, as we saw from the 9th century up until now. And I think when we forget that actual people's lives are at stake and we collectively group people and call them Nazis or call them little Russians, it is very much easier to justify the actions of the aggressor. And that is why I wanted to include this in my presentation and give it the recognition that this is taking place and address it in the way that I could during this presentation. But I also wanted to include the beautiful pictures from Ukraine and show how beautiful it is, how rich in culture it is, how developed it is, and just give the recognition of the destruction that's currently happening in all regions, and give props to our defense that is happening, and all the volunteers, all of the Ukrainian armed forces who are there to defend us every day and defend my family who are currently in Ukraine still. Yes, thank you.
If you could stop sharing, yeah, thank you. And so now we'll turn it over to the other Kateryna.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
And can you see my screen?
Yes.
Perfect, thank you. I would like to thank you all for joining this forum today. I appreciate your willingness to learn and expand your knowledge about my home country. So my presentation will have maybe just a little bit of political components in it, and I miss my home so much, and I've been there many years ago, almost 10 years ago. And my all memories are related to the most positive things that I encountered there. Of course, there were some negative things, just like everywhere else, but bad things we tend to forget, and only good memories left. So I would like to share selected beautiful things that I remember about my country, and I would like you to learn about. So on this first slide, how do I slideshow?
Yeah, slideshow, yep. And then from the beginning.
Perfect, yes. So on the first slide, you see the Ukrainian flag, which is blue and yellow, and it is a symbol of blue sky with no clouds and no problems, and yellow wheat, which is a symbol of, you know, being well-fed, wealthy, and again, having no problems. The emblem of the country is read as vola, which means freedom. And I think this term sounds very close to Americans who like to be free, who were fighting for freedom quite a lot. This is where Ukraine is on the map of Europe. This green country was Ukraine before Crimea fell off and became part of Russia. And now Russia is claiming that this most eastern part of Ukraine is theirs. And by the way, I came from the city of Donetsk, which is right here, one of the most eastern big cities. And I will explain this a little bit more. My home is called Dim. It's a translation of the word home. I consider home as a big home Ukraine and small home as my home city. And talking about Ukraine, I would like to mention that, and not everyone knows that this is the second largest country in Europe, actually. But the first one is European part of Russia. Ukraine is huge. Ukraine has many borders with different countries: Russia, Belarus, Poland, Slovakia, Hungary, Romania, and Moldova. And because of that, you can only imagine how rich the cultural environment is. Everyone learns about everyone. We learn multiple languages. We participate in each other holidays, and we are soaked with each other cultures. We also have access to the water via Azov Sea and Black Sea. Population of our country is about 40 million, and the capital and the largest city of Ukraine is Kiev. And you see the official year when it was born. Can you imagine how long ago it was? It's more than 1,500 years ago. It's that old. Every time I go to Kiev, used to go to Kiev, I felt this age. I was sniffing the rocks on the ground. They smelled so good. They smelled like every rock had a history. Every rock seen so many events. It was amazing. This is again the map of the Ukraine, and with the red, the area where I came from. You see how close it is to Russia. My city was called a city of million roses. We have roses everywhere, every park, every square, every corner, every sidewalk covered with roses. And even now, after so many tragic events, people sometimes they just collect leftover broken roses and they propagate them in the jars somewhere on the windowsill, and then they go and replant them to replace those that were destroyed by bombing. Everyone tries to maintain the spirit of this city of million roses. Unfortunately, many places in my home city look like this now. This picture was taken on one of the streets where I myself used to walk every day to my medical university. Every day, from Monday through Friday. This is the path that I took. I know every little sidewalk, every corner, every sign, road sign, everything. So I recognized exactly where this man who is in such despair is standing. And I feel very sorry for these people right now. Talking a little bit more again about the Ukraine, you can see that more than 3/4 of all of them are Ukrainians, and they call themselves Ukrainians. Of course, there are some Russians, and by the way, me, ethnically, I am a Russian person. My mom is Russian, my dad is Russian, my grandmas and grandpas, ethnically, we are Russians. It doesn't mean that we agree with everything that is going on, but you cannot deny your own roots. This is what we are. And we have quite a bit of others, not many, and I do not think this is a very accurate statistics, even though I try to make it so. mostly maybe now many foreign people left because it's simply not safe to be there. But we used to have a lot of foreigners, especially in Kiev and in larger cities where we had universities. We had many international students who brought their families over there, or who just decided to grow roots on the Ukrainian land, and they stayed there and they had families and children there. Our religion is mostly Christianity. Many people have no religion, and some report that they have different affiliations. Our president right now is Volodymyr Zelensky, who is elected for 5 years for maximum of 2 terms. We have Verkhovna Rada, which is White House equivalent, and Sud, which is Supreme Court. As you can see, the same 3 branches of government. A little bit of the culture. These young ladies carry and wear it's very special embroidered clothing and I don't know how to call this, cloths, maybe for table runners and tablecloths. They're called vyshivanka from the word vyshivati, which it means to make an embroidery. They look very different in different areas of Ukraine, and those folks who know how they look and those who can distinguish where those vishvankas come from, they actually have a high value in the country, like ethnographers and culturologists, sociologists. Every little area has their little style with a different tone of the flowers, or the pattern, or the size, or amount of leaflets. This is like a little dialect, little accent in the cultural like hands-on hobby, I guess. This is another very interesting thing, and I actually went there when I was 12 years old. It's called Tunnel of Love, and it is semi-abandoned railway in Klaven in Ukraine, and it is considered as a perfect place for newlyweds and just romantic couples. People go there and have their anniversaries, the weddings, engagements. They bring their kids there. It is absolutely safe. It is protected areas, like a national kind of small park. So it's one of the sites that is well known in Europe. And we think that if you make a wish and you go through, the wish will come true. You probably all know the symbol of Ukraine right now, at least the symbol that is a plant, sunflower, and Ukraine grows oceans of sunflowers. And I mean oceans. Sometimes when you ride in a bus or in the car, you look around and you cannot see anything but sunflowers on everywhere around you, left, right. You look behind, they're everywhere. There is no ending, and they're beautiful. Also, Ukraine is considered as a breadbasket of Europe because it grows so much bread. And on this picture, you probably recognize where the Ukrainian flag comes from, the wheat and the blue sky. In Kiev, we have the deepest metro or underground station in the world. It's called Arsenalna, from the word arsenal. It is almost 350 feet deep. It takes more than 10 minutes just standing to go down on this escalator. I remember myself as a kid standing there. It was the awesomest experience. I was ready to pay my pocket money just to go up and down on this metro station. I am sure that many of you know what pisanki are. They are eggs. They can be real eggs, well, drained. They can be hard-boiled eggs. Well, too bad you need to destroy the shell. Or they can be wooden eggs, or they can be whatever material eggs, just decorated in a special way. The initial idea was to decorate them for Easter. But after they became so popular and so heartwarming and so warming, that people started making them for any sorts of reasons. They are perfect gifts. They are perfect decorations. They are perfect. I don't know. Instead of doing rock painting, I'm doing pisanki painting. And I share them sometimes. I have my own students as a nursing instructor, and I make pisanki with brief notes for my students, like something like, you can do it, or you got this, girl, or after your finals. I know it's not as beautiful, and there's no way I can make them so nice, as nice as on this picture, but I adopted the idea of taking the egg and drawing on the egg and making it a little bit more beautiful than it was before. So pisanki in my heart, more or less, but still. Petrikivka. This is another type of art that is very popular in Ukraine. It was born in a teeny tiny village of Petrikivka, which is in the Dnipropetrovsk region in Ukraine. And skilled girls used to paint walls outside and inside of their homes. So they would have more decorated walls, not boring walls, maybe to attract guys, or to show that they are more, I don't know, handy females. Whatever reason they had, they did it. And this tradition comes from the 18th century. You will most likely not see any faces, or if you see faces, they are very primitive. Those motifs are mostly nature, birds, flowers, berries, and it is easy to do. I took many classes, and I used to actually make some of those Petrikivka drawings, and I still have few earrings that I made myself, and a few like brooches that I I pin onto my like headband and use as a decoration. It is not difficult to learn how to do it, and it's very beautiful. I teach my daughter, who is 5, to do this drawings. We still do it on regular like paper plates. This is how everyone starts, I guess. But sooner or later we'll progress to the wooden background, and maybe even rocks. Rocks are perfect. So this type of paintings is actually included in the UNESCO list of the cultural heritage of humanity. It is quite known cultural luggage of the country. And on this picture, you see one of the females who is making this drawing. Most likely she's making a draft, so then she can transfer it on a better background, not the paper. And this is one of the results. Isn't it just gorgeous? Look at the colors, how well mixed they are, how amazingly blended they are. And this birdie, if you look closer, it is quite easy to make it. You can make it. And the berries are done with the Q-tip. That easy. Or you can take your fingertip and do those berries. But altogether, it is an amazing art. I love it. This is another example. Very bright and beautiful. The only thing about Petrikivka painting is that you cannot use it as anything else but the decoration. because it's all polished and glazed. So this surface will not survive any acidic foods, any base foods, any dishwashing, powders, soaps, scrubbing. So it is only to put on the wall or somewhere, for the display. Because once you make a scratch or something, it will just, the heart will hurt. And this is how it looks on the actual house. I have been in Petrikivka, and I've seen many houses. They look amazing. There is not even one that looks the same. They're all different. Even if you try to replicate the design, it will come out different, because you will mix the colors differently. You will add something. Your heart will just guide your hand, and you will definitely make it different. This is Russian, Russian Ukrainian. How you call this? Big, huge, burning cooking place where you can sleep on the top and cook inside, like a big stove. And also, of course, it's decorated. We cannot have things boring way. Sorry. Stopping on the drawing and going close to the dinner. I am hungry, so when I see borscht, I start salivating, guys. I cook borscht for myself at least every month, and I eat the whole bowl of it right away. But this is the dish that, just like with chili, if it stands for a day or two, it will become better. All those flavors will blend in together, and they will become so beautiful. The main ingredient in borscht is beet. And it is served with cold sour cream. Sometimes you can sprinkle a little bit of green stuff on the top, but it's not necessary. And I have never heard about a vegetarian borscht. I'm sorry, it comes with meat. This is another thing that makes me salivate. It's called sala. You can see that this is probably something that reminds you of bacon, but it has little to no meat in it. Many people would say, ugh, yuck, how can you eat just plain fat? Well, if you cook it correctly, and if you cook it with spices and with different food fragrances, with garlic and with peppers, and you salt it well, and then you freeze it, and then you take the knife, very sharp knife, and you make slices that are transparent, and you look through them at the light, and you see every single fat cell in it. And then you roll them, or you just put flat on a piece of bread, like a pickle, or maybe another garlic, or some green, how you call them? Green onions, those little long things. Oh, this is so good. Mwah. This is vareniki, which is kind of Ukrainian version of dumplings, and they come with whatever beautiful things you want to see inside. Most of us do not buy them already cooked, because they just do not taste right. You make them yourself, because only you can put the correct amount of potatoes inside, or cheese inside, or sour cherries inside, or whatever combinations of food. They are amazing. My favorite varenikis are with potatoes inside, and I like them first to boil and then fry with fried onions and a little bit of dill. They are amazing. And of course, sour cream, you cannot go without it. Here's the list of some Ukrainian words that I put here. By the way, is it possible to share my presentation with whoever would like to have it? I am okay with that.
Okay, yes, if you send it to me, I'll make sure that we put it up on our web.
Okay, perfect. So hi would be привіт. Thank you will be спасибі. Please and you're welcome is the same word. Будь ласка. I love you is я кохаю тебе. you can say to your sweetheart, "Я кохаю тебе." Трошки is a little bit of something. Трошки вареники means a little bit of вареники. Я хочу, I want вареники. Я хочу вареники. Дай мені вареники. Or дай мені борщ. I am definitely hungry. I want all that food. And goodbye is до побачення. If you get my presentation from the website, I put several links that you can open with the dance, famous Ukrainian dance hopak, when guys jump up in the air and do things that you would think that normal person would never be able to do in the air with their limbs, and the whole body moves and twists and turns. It is amazing. It is probably 5 minutes worth of a video, but it's worth to watch. And I put few songs that I think would give a good idea of Ukrainian language and Ukrainian a way of feeling the music and feeling the words. Again, if you would like to open those links, please do that. And also one video that was done on the Ukrainian territory. The main character, the actor, is from my home city, and it was done during the Soviet Union empire, if I can say it this way. There is nothing political in this movie. I love it because it talks about how human nations live and coexist and respect each other. They do things together. This is why I like this video. It has English subtitles, so you can watch that. And this is my family. If you ever need me for whatever reason, this is my cell phone number. It's my personal cell phone number and my personal email. And here are my kiddos. The one in the black, the biggest and tallest, 6.6 feet 3 inches. Andrew, he is 15. The blonde, the one that looks like he has sour cream instead of hair, is Michael. He is 13. Another young gentleman is John. He is 7. And the princess, of course, her name is Kateryna, after myself. It was a pleasure to talk to you, and I hope I will get to know you better, and maybe we will meet one day. Thank you.
Okay. So, if you was, yep, thank you. Well, I will open it up now to questions. If folks have questions for either of the Katerynas. Maybe use the reactions. Under reactions, I think there's a raise hand function because I don't think we all fit on the same screen. So the raise hand will bring you to where I can see you. So if you will raise your hand if you have a question. I have a question. So I will start with Kateryna, Paliukh, and ask you, so you left, was it when the Crimea was annexed? Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, I left I left in 2014 at the end of the summer. So it was right about the time where Crimea was about to, was right about the time where Crimea got annexed. And I think thinking back at it, my family, the things that they were saying was, oh, it's better that you're away. It's better that you're in the US during this time, because it was a very uncertain time that we were living through. And I also remember that we were planning with my mom to go to Europe, to travel. And one of the concerns that we had was whether the borders were going to get closed and whether we would be able to come back. But also, I think it gave me the opportunity because I was attending high school. I was volunteering at the library. And I think it gave me a lot of opportunities to share my culture, to participate in a lot of cultural events, and give multiple presentations, and live this teenage life, a different teenage life than I had at the time, but also be able to share my culture and learn from the teenagers my age, and also share that perspective with them. And yeah, I think while it was an opportunity to educate, it was also an opportunity for me to learn at the time.
Have you been able to travel back to the Ukraine since then?
Yes. No, yeah, I think at the time our borders did not get closed, even though there was, again, a lot of uncertainty. But in 2014 and up until the 2022, the conflict was very isolated. So I think a lot of questions that people have is, oh, is it happening all across Ukraine? And at the time it wasn't. It was very isolated just to a certain territory, whereas the rest of Ukraine was quite peaceful. Mm-hmm. And when it spread was in 2022, when that full-scale invasion began. But until then, I was lucky enough to live on the territory that was peaceful and not affected. I know the other Kateryna was not as lucky as I was at the time.
So, Patricia Burns had a question. I saw your hand up, Pat.
Yeah, thank you. I did. Thank you both. These presentations were heartbreaking and also quite wonderful. I'm curious, the second Kateryna said you grew up surrounded by many languages, and my understanding was everyone was multilingual to some degree, and embarrassed by the fact that I really only know English. I'm curious to know a little more about that. Were many languages taught in school? Did young people just pick them up when they would go to stores or you know, be on the streets? Just how did it really work? And did you appreciate how wonderful that was? Because to me, it's just kind of awesome.
Thank you for your question. Well, to start answering, we had 2 languages that are taught to us like native level, Russian and Ukrainian. So I am native in both. Besides that, at school, starting from the first grade, which is when you're 6 years old, you start with the first foreign language, and then at the 3rd or 4th grade, you add second foreign language, and if you want, you can have more later on. So technically, by the end of high school, if you're really into languages, you can easily have 5 languages already. And this is how, for example, my brother was. He is more language savvy than me myself. I only did 3.5. I really tried to do German, but I was quite distracted with my medical school at that time. And you know, I got married, I got distracted. I had kids, so I lost with the kids, having kids and being, you know, employed all the time and studying. I was doing my master's then. I lost ability to just, you know, go out with folks from different places, from different countries. So I lost ability to communicate and just speak my 4th language, which is German. I still can read. I would love to get it back to at least the level that I had, and maybe one year at the University of Maine and the Department of Critical Languages will get me back one day. I do appreciate everything, every single language course that I had, and it is a common practice for the kids to know at least 2 languages. At least 2 is like a bare minimum. It's a neglectful minimum. It's a shameful minimum. 3 is okay.
Have you traveled back to Ukraine since leaving?
Because I am from the most eastern part where the conflict started, and it kept going with, as I would say, exacerbations here and there. And the most recent one that started more than a year ago, it's just simply not safe. And being a single mom of 4 kids here, I cannot sacrifice and put myself in danger leaving them. What if something happens? I'm not afraid of flying, but if I've seen people taking videos of how the road is, and literally couple feet on the right, couple feet on the left, there are huge holes in the ground from landmines, and some remains.
Yep.
Excuse me.
Yeah.
So
Yep.
no,
Yep.
I never traveled back since I left.
Was your family able to get to safety?
No, they are there. My mom and dad and my brother and my grandmother and my brother's wife, they're there.
Oh, God.
Oh, that's difficult. Yeah. Mary Phillips.
I have a question for both Katerynas. I'm wondering if you could, maybe this is not possible, but if you could tell us about what you thought were the major cultural differences you felt when you came to the United States, from where you grew up and your backgrounds and culture. Where were the biggest, what was the biggest things, or were the biggest things that you noticed?
I can start first. I came from a big city with more than 1 million population, and the first place that I entered, well, I did not consider JFK as the first place. The first place where I landed to live was Westport, New York, in Adirondacks Forest, upstate New York, with like, it was winter, no people at all. Population of that place maybe 500 or 600 people, and maybe during the tourist season. So my personal experience was a shock of transferring from a city life to the woods, to the extreme rural environment with one convenience store. No matter which way you go, you end up in that convenience store, and this is the only place to get bread and gas. It's, well, you laugh now. I was ready to cry. I love the part of safety, but my heart longs places like Boston. This is where I belong. Rural America is great, and I appreciate it, but for a city girl, it's probably okay to go and spend some time in the forest, but not live there constantly. I saw a bear there. I saw a bear. My only encounter with a bear was a black bear coat that I was wearing probably when I was 3 or 4 years old. That's it. And then in that Westport, I saw the bear with my eyes. I could not believe that I am actually still on Earth. It's so funny. But, well, of course, I almost pooped in my pants. So the environment, the rural part was different. That was my major shock, I would say. Not the language, because I spoke English, okay. Not the food, because I was cooking back home and I still cook here. So I just pick up the ingredients. Not the driving, we drive on the same side of the road. Not people, still, same friendly, nice. The rural situation was shocking for me.
I guess, yeah, for me, I had a shocking, somehow when we land, we have these shocking situations, but when I landed in the US, I had a medical emergency where I had to be taken to a hospital in DC. And my shock was that by the time that I arrived in the hospital, they had all of my information, they had basic tests done. So the second that I rolled into the hospital, they already knew that everything that I've said in the ambulance going there. So I think that was one of my biggest shocks coming in. And then I guess when I finally arrived at my final destination, which was Maine, I still remember how, and for me, it was houses, and I do not know why it was such a fascination for me with the houses, but in Ukraine, a lot of people, we live in condos rather than, we do have separate houses, but they're more on like the outside of the city. And for me, driving through and seeing these single family houses, it was as if I ended up in the movie. And I remember just looking at each one of them and seeing different designs and different styles. And I was imagining what kind of people live in each of the houses. So I think that for me never wore off. Whenever I go to a different town or city in the US and also in Canada, this is the thing that I'm most fascinated by.
Interesting. Oh, that's wonderful. Oh, thank you so much. That's fascinating.
Other questions for our guests? So Kateryna, Bagrii, do you see yourself, has Maine, have you gotten used to a little bit smaller size place to live?
Yeah.
You see, I cannot get a perfect feeling because my city, and at least the part of the city where I grew up, was safe, wealthy, and it was a city with all pleasures that you can get in a big city, like a theater. We have opera, we have ballet, we have our own circus, we have multiple universities, we have public transportation, everything. And everything is closed and it is safe.
Yeah.
Here, when I go to Boston, some areas okay, but then you make 15 steps and one, sideways, and it's not okay anymore. And I have hard time distinguishing where it would be safe, and at the same time I would enjoy the pleasures of the city. So I think at this point, having 4 kids, I will stay where I am right now. This is very quite wealthy area with snowbirds and with a lot of tourists that come in the summer. It is they have good schools. So for the kids, I will stay here. And when my heart desires something, from the city, I will just take my 4-hour ride to Boston and enjoy myself there.
And other Kateryna, how did you end up in Yukon?
Oh, a long story it is. Well, when I arrived in Canada, I stayed in Victoria, British Columbia. That's where I went to the university. That's where I met my partner. That's where I stayed after graduating. But then after the full-scale invasion, I was able to get my mom and my younger brother to Canada.
Oh, good.
And British Columbia is quite an expensive place to live, and we needed more space. And I got offered an opportunity to work for the government of the Yukon. And my partner actually grew up here, so we made a decision to make a move up north and explore the wilderness, see the bears and the moose, and we have a fox that plays with my dog in the backyard. So I think it was a decision to get more space to be able to for my mom and my brother to have a bit of a quieter environment, and for us all to have a bit more space. And yeah, I think that's how we ended up in the north. We actually had snow just today, so we're still very much in the winter mode.
Was it either one of you? Was it difficult to become a permanent resident? Was that a long process? Was it an easy process for you? How did that work for you? If you're willing to talk about that.
It was not a difficult process, long process, and I am a citizen at this point.
Okay.
So it's just a long chain of paperwork, I would say it this way, and long periods of waiting between the paperwork and making sure that nothing's missing. But I am a paperwork person myself and very precise with details, so I never experienced any problems. It's just, you know, everything takes forever. That's the only thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a permanent resident of the US, but we actually, a couple of years ago, my family applied to get a green card to the US and we got selected and we almost went through the process. But then at the last moment, because of the nature of my exchange program, that it was funded by the US government, I was not able to get a permanent residency through green card process with my family, and my family did not want to be separated against in case I had some issues in Canada, so they never went through with the process. In Canada, I was successful in getting permanent residency. My process fell right on the pandemic, so it was definitely stretched out, delayed. At this point, I have experience with different types of visas, different types of application processes, and there's only a few that I'm not familiar with. So I'm lucky that it all got approved without any issues. And we're trying to get my mom and brother on that process to get their permanent residency now. So yeah, it's, as Kateryna said, it's definitely a stretched out, very meticulous process, but I'm glad there are those kinds of opportunities to get the permanent residency.
Thank you. Do other people have questions?
I have one.
Bill?
To what extent do you find the American citizen different? How would you characterize Americans by comparison with Ukrainians?
Question.
I guess I could start on that one. I think I wouldn't say that there are many differences. I think it's, I would characterize the difference in the mentality itself. I find that with American people, I found them very open straight away. Whenever I met them, there was a lot of openness right away. With the Ukrainian people, I find that it takes time to work towards that openness, and if you make friends, you make friends for life. That's no question. But I find that in the offset, you will find that Ukrainian people might not smile as much just regularly on the streets as you walk. Yeah, I think it's just that difference in mentality and how you have that first encounter and how you work towards that friendship.
Yeah.
I would say that I do not see many differences except for one big. Americans want everything or many things to happen faster. Like, I want fast food, so I want it now. I want it right away. Or I have a pain, so I will take something that will eliminate my pain to 0. Or I want clothes, I'll just jump in my car and I will go. So Ukrainians, because they are they, for many, many years, decades and centuries, they did not have access to stuff immediately. They developed this some kind of patience, I guess. So if I tell my kids who say, "Mom, I'm hungry," I say, "Okay, dinner will be in about an hour." It's okay with them because I raised them in this manner. But if my significant other comes and says, "Oh, I want food," so I better give him food now because he is hungry now. That is a big difference, and I observe it in many different little ways in many different people around me. Maybe it is state of Maine a characteristic because I have not been in many other states. I've been in New York, California, New Hampshire, Vermont, and Maine. So covering this area, this is my observation.
Yeah.
That you guys want everything now, or if possible.
Thank you.
Oh, those are such good answers. Interesting
I
answers.
just wanted to say that thank you for sharing your life story. And as you were talking, I was realizing I'm from Iran, so I left Iran long time ago. But as I was listening to your stories, I realized how our stories are similar, although we come from different countries. You know, you come from Ukraine because of the situation, and I come from Iran because of revolution, because I was a Baha'i and I was persecuted. I have to leave the country. So the similarities between our life are really amazes me, and the experiences you had, you know. So thank you for sharing and reminding me how similar we all are. Thank you.
Yeah.
And thank you for being here. And I agree. Yeah. And as speaking with many people and many immigrants for whatever reason who relocated to the US, to Canada, we do share a lot of similar experiences. And it's heartwarming in a way to know that even though you come from different cultures, there are those shared experiences that you have and that you connect with.
Well said.
Yeah.
I would like to add that this is an amazingly small world. I was not really related to the topic of today's conversation, but I went to one of the cardiac conferences in New Orleans this year. And during one of the conferences, one of the doctors from India comes to me and looks at my badge with my first and last name, and he asked me if I was from the Ukraine. And I said, yes, how do you know? Gentleman, well, the doctor from India on American soil asking me if I was from Ukraine. And I said, yes. And then he asked me, are you from Donetsk? And I said, yes. Not every person knows that name. And then he said, you know what? I recognize your last name, and it's not a common last name. Your grandmother was my neurology instructor when I was a medical student and studying in your medical university on the international faculty, international department. So he remembered my grandma, who had the same last name, and he said, I loved her lectures, I loved her presentations. She turned my life from top to bottom. She made me actually, I kept up with my spirit, and I became a doctor, and I will never forget. She's like, wow.
It's the main community college.
It looks like a fake crown though.
Oh yeah, well it's a fake. Yes, it is.
You're on mute, aren't you?
I am sorry, I did not hear about the community college. I heard a couple words.
I think it was just speaking in the background to someone else making a comment.
Oh, yes.
Your email address that shows up on your screen is from EMCC. So I think that's what.
Yes, I am an instructor in many places, including Eastern Maine College, and through that school, I have my Zoom access, which is, you know, teacher size unlimited amount of minutes.
Yeah.
This is how I sign in.
Any last questions for our guests this evening?
I have a question.
Oh, go ahead.
Thank you, Kateryna P and Kateryna B. And I will say spasibi. That's thank you. Okay. So my question is this, you know, it's heartbroken to be away from home. It's even worse when things are happening and your family is back home and you are not able to see them, they're not able to see you. You don't know what exactly is true. Now, my question is this, and I see from what Kateryna P, that Russia has always wanted to take over Ukraine. They get independence and they go back and they go back. Now, what is the truth? What do you want us to know as the truth? Because the media will report things and say this, you know, what do you know? What do you want to leave us with as the truth that we need to know about Russia and Ukraine, so that we're able to also educate other people when they start to talk?
Great question.
Yeah, excellent.
Yeah, if I may start, I think one of the biggest things that I personally wanted to deliver with my presentations is that there are a lot of connecting ties that exist between Ukraine, between Russia, between Ukraine and Poland, between Ukraine and the countries that surround us, just because of the nature of where we are and what part of Russian Empire, Polish and Lithuanian empire that we were part of. We have lots of connections, but ultimately we do have our own culture. As Kateryna also presented, we do have our language, we have our culture, we have our identity. And even though, yes, we do speak Russian as well, I myself grew up with the Russian language, even though I never explicitly studied it. We do have that separation and we do have our own identity. My parents, when I was born, my parents made an explicit choice because it was cool to speak Russian at the time. When they met, they both spoke Russian, and then they made an informed decision when I was born to grow their family in Ukrainian and speak Ukrainian language. So I think one of the biggest takeaways that I wanted people to have from my presentation is that, yes, there's lots of history, and history is complicated. There's lots of connections, there's a lot of ties, but we do have our own separate culture and identity.
I would like to deliver a different message, because I grew up in an area that is between many Ukrainians and many Russians, and I've been exposed to both sides. I would like to say equally, if it is a measurable thing. And I know many Russians and I know many Ukrainians. I would like to say that there are Russians and Ukrainians who disagree with the conflict, and they both sides hurt from what is going on. I mentioned that I am Russian. My heart still hurts for every single Ukrainian person who suffered in the conflict, for every Russian person who suffered in the conflict, for every whatever other nation person suffered in the conflict. I have like further relatives in the middle of Russia who do not support the political situation, who do not support the conflict, and they really feel hurt when in the news especially, things are generalized and biased. When they say, oh, Russians are bad, or Russians do this, or Ukrainians do this. Every person has deserves to be heard and should not be put in one big blend like a salad with a stigma of belonging to a specific ethnicity. I would not wish to be ever considered on the violent side. If one exists, this is not the nation that fights against the nation. It is something else, and there are many thousands of people who do not participate or do not agree. So I would like to leave you with this message that both sides have people who do not support any violence that is happening right now.
Other questions? Well, I do not have the link to the to the evaluation, so I will send it out via email, and hopefully you will take the time to fill it out. I want to thank both Katerynas for joining us. I think we are all sad to see what's happening in Ukraine. We're sad to see the invasion, especially when people are trying to live peacefully, democratically. You know, that's what we would want for them. That's what we want for your family. So I think, yeah, good luck to you. Good luck to the people in your family. Thanks so much for sharing with us. We really do appreciate it, and it helps us to kind of understand things a little bit better. William Vos, I see your hand up.
I was just trying to applaud our speakers. Thank you for a wonderful presentation. I'll do it now.
Okay, I think we all echo that. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Oh, it was just so wonderful to hear you.
And email me your presentation, Kateryna. We'll be putting the video recording as well as just the sound recording of this up on our webpage, and we'll have your PowerPoint there too.
You can turn that.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, both of you. And send me your email. Send me your mailing addresses. So I'll send you an email. Thank you very much.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.
Thank you all for attending. Bye now. End recording.